What do you think Helen represents to Agamemnon, to Paris, and to Menelaus?
Oh, to Agamemnon, she's definitely a prize because when Tyndareus was saying that his daughter's pretty much up for marriage now, he had all the suitors in Greece come fight um, in war games basically for her, or just athletic competitions or whatnot, and it was Agamemnon who won this competition and got the hand of Helen in marriage, but then gave it to his brother Menelaus. But Agamemnon in the Iliad is very much about having to be the best and having to show his superiority over all the other Greeks. So I feel like Helen just sort of plays into that a little bit because he's like, I have now won the hand of the most beautiful woman in the world. Um, so to her, she's just a prize. And um, half of the times that Helen is mentioned in the Iliad, it is Helen and all her possessions. And that would have come with the prize of Helen is her wealth and the title of King of Sparta. And who was the second person?
Paris.
Paris definitely sees her as just somebody to have fun with. Somebody that he can just have sexual intercourse with. He's not concerned about anything about Helen except for that fact. And what sort of shows that is in book 3 when Aphrodite has plucked Paris from the battlefield and placed him in his and Helen's bedchamber, and Helen is just ripping one into him, and his first response is, "Oh my gosh, I love you, let's have sex." And who's the next one?
Menelaus.
So I feel like Menelaus is also sort of in the same boat as Agamemnon, where he sees Helen as a prize and as a trophy wife. Um, just because, but to him, Helen also represents sort of his masculinity, because part of the reason why the Greeks go to Troy is not to get, well, for all of the Greeks, it's not to get Helen back, but for Menelaus, it is to get Helen back because the fact that he has lost his wife has shown to all the other Greeks that he is not capable of controlling his wife. So if he can't do that, sort of what type of man is he? And so getting Helen back will sort of reissue him his masculinity. But then also too, Helen also represents his ticket into the island of the blessed, because by marriage to Helen, he also now gets to enter the island of the blessed and become immortal and not die. Um, so I don't know what single word that representation can be wrapped up into.
As a woman character in a predominantly male story, is Helen as of much importance as we are told she is?
Who's telling her importance? Is it the Iliad? Is it people today? Is it
Both.
both? Well, I feel like Homer places an importance on Helen, but he does it in a subtle way to where you have to really look for it. But he definitely sees the importance and value of a woman like Helen because in many ways she's like the first she's like the first, not the first strong female character, but she is a strong female character that has some, to some degree, a range of agency and whatnot, and he recognizes that, but it's not necessarily there. It's in between the lines. Um, but for people today, I feel like not as much importance is placed on her, even though she is one of the figures from the Iliad that is still talked about today. Even probably even more so than Achilles, who the whole Iliad is about. Except she's been chalked down to like, oh, she's the most beautiful woman in the world. Which interestingly, I did not say that when I said who was Helen. I never mentioned that. I'm just thinking about. So, whew. She's of more importance than what we are told. How so? Because people have just chucked her down to the most beautiful woman in the world, and that's it. They don't decide to look further into her character. They just assume, like, oh, that's the only thing I need to know about her character. And there's so much more to her character than that, because as I've said, when you asked me the first question, who is Helen, not once did I ever mention Helen is the most beautiful woman in the world.
Do you think that has anything to do with the fact that you're a female?
Me? No, it's just from the fact that I've studied Helen and know that that's just a superficial just title for who Helen is, like, because there's so much more that she does besides just standing and looking pretty. If Helen does everything but stand and look pretty. So she has a very active role in everything that she does, because she lets other people think that they're running the show, but really it's her running the show. And she just has this guise of standing and looking pretty, and everybody's willing to believe it because nobody's willing to believe that a pretty girl has brains.
Helen is simultaneously, as you stated and as I've understood you stating it, Helen is a strong, independent woman who is capable of many things and yet is also a not like a two-dimensional character, but is seen by people and historians now, mostly male historians looking back on it, as a two-dimensional woman character in any antiquitable description. So how do you think she manages to be both of these things to people? How can she be a two-dimensional woman character and still be a strong woman?
Because I feel like people just see in Helen what they want to see, because they're not, depending upon how deep they're looking into Helen. If they're looking at just the surface level and stop there, that's where she becomes two-dimensional, and that's sort of where men's, like, unfortunately, like, there's just no other way to put it. And that's people who aren't really looking to look deeper into her too. So like the general public, there's no need for them to study Helen. There's no need for them to know about Euripides' Helen. There's no need for them to know about the in-between lines stuff being said in the Iliad, because they've just been told, oh, Helen is the face that launched 1,000 ships, which is not used until like 1800, by the way. But and that's what they've been told, and so that's what they believe to be true, and they just accept it for what it is instead of digging further and looking further and actually realizing, like, oh my god, this is who Helen actually is. She's more than just a pretty face. And it's just from that willingness to look further and deeper into the sources.